what makes us different than any other distillery or beverage business is our ability to create other people's dreams and other people's visions. I think that there's a level of hospitality to our business at Earl Giles that's unstoppable. And I think that what is unstoppable about Mr. Paul's Supper Club and the team there is this unwavering commitment to a good fucking time.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really special about that, and you felt it last night.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm still feeling it.
This episode is brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, CEO and co-owner at Earl Giles and Beverage Director at Mr. Paul's Supper Club, my man, Nick Kosevich. Are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am, yes.
Oh, man, I am looking forward to today's conversation.
Excellent, me too.
And after getting all of your titles squared away, I think we're ready to rock and roll. Are you feeling unstoppable?
I'm unstoppable.
Yeah,
Let's
dude.
go.
Let's do this. I honestly want to point out how amazing of a time I had last night.
Awesome.
After talking to our boy Tommy, he referred me to you off air, and getting this big picture of what it's like to create an experience and being able to live that experience. I'm so excited for the direction I'm going with the show because I get to talk about the thing and then experience the thing. And it's no secret why you guys are successful, man. I just wanted to give you that little nod there before we got into it.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun last night.
Let's keep that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with the success quarter mantra. What do you got for us?
So, and this is kind of funny because I didn't know where this came from, but I must have heard it on the TV or somewhere in passing in the last couple of days, and it kind of stuck with me, is pressure is a privilege. And then I was like, who said this first? And it turns out to be tennis star Billie Jean King. And so I went down that rabbit hole for a minute, but I think the mantra of that has been kind of resonating with me as of late, as I have felt a lot of pressure, and I kind of flipped the script and realized like how lucky I am to feel that pressure.
Read between the lines there. What do you think is meant by pressure is a privilege? What's the message?
The way that I interpreted it, and this could be completely not the way it is meant to be interpreted, but why it stuck with me in this past week was, there you go, the simple fact that I'm in a position in my career, in a current place in my career, that the pressure I feel from my work or the pressure I feel from the balance of work and family, I have a beautiful family and I have a beautiful career, and it is hard to balance those two things, and it's a privilege for me to have that opportunity. And in a time where I have felt a lot of weight on my shoulders as of recently, it was very helpful.
Yeah, man. Mindset's everything in this industry, and it's one of the reasons why I'm geeking out as of late of this idea of like what's going on between our ears, like what's going on in this brain of ours, to figure out the discipline, to figure out the psychology, to have the mindset to show up and to embrace the shitty things and embrace the suck, and that's what I hear in this mantra of pressure is a privilege. Like we're constantly under pressure in this industry, and I think that pressure bubbles up anxiety and fear and emotion in us. We are not those things. That's evolutionary, like psychology, like telling us to save energy and like to make us think and be aware of things, but we don't have to be afraid of things. Like we can choose to embrace that. What's going through your mind as I'm sharing this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm continually in the pursuit of balance between everything, and I think that as I'm getting older, I feel like I'm learning how to be more in control of the balance between work life and personal life and family and work and those types of things that can pull you in several directions. Yeah. It's when something isn't clicking. It's like when it all works out, it's all very smooth, right? And then if there's something, at home or something with the work, and it starts to feel like all of a sudden the mountain that you've created for yourself can very much show its nasty side sometimes, I think.
For sure.
That to me is also a lot of perspective. On any given day, you could feel that overwhelming, kind of wave of like, oh, what have I gotten myself into? Whether
you feel the wave of the pressure, you still got to do the shit.
Yeah.
So choose not to let it control your thoughts, because it's not going to make it the experience better.
Yep.
I love the way we got this thing started. And so I got to hang out with you and Tommy and Peter last night, and I got to experience Mr. Paul's Supper Club, and it was amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
The food was amazing. The people were amazing. The vibe was amazing. And I have literally had no clue anything about you as of last night, because I'm literally drinking from a fire hose right now, letting people just like refer people to me. I'm like, yeah, I'll take it, because the speed of trust. Like, Tommy knows this industry, the market in Minneapolis way better than I do. But I had the privilege of looking into your background this morning and doing some research, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, I had no clue who I was talking to last night and hanging out with. Man, you're super successful. Like, you have this incredible career of traveling the country and helping restaurants open and helping their bar program. And like, I know that you're into EOS. That came out last night too, so I'm excited to get into that. But take us back to the beginning. Where does it make sense to start sharing your story?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, you know, in the restaurant side of things, you know, I think that the beginning is, you know, my first restaurant gig was at a place called Palomino here in Minneapolis. And this is, you know, 2000, you know, 2001, maybe even like, right around there. So I had, you know, graduated from Faribault High School, which is about an hour south of here, and then went to school at the University of Minnesota for theater for 1 year. And then was asked not to come back. And then I found myself in a restaurant, you know. And
well, you're still in theater today, man. You're putting on a show for sure as a bartender. There's no question.
I was a musician for 5 years in my early 20s as well. And when I started to let that go to the wayside, I found a lot of the things that I needed from the music world and performance I was finding behind the bar, for sure. So
what did you need?
You know, I'm an entertainer. I mean, at the heart of it, that is what I am. And so, you know, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian when I was, you know, 18. Yeah, exactly. Every now and again, I think about getting up on stage and getting it started.
Encourage you to. I'll hold you to it if you hold me to it. Yeah. But I want to point out too, not just an entertainer, but a creator.
Yeah.
I think you're very much a creator. I think it manifests in the drinks you create. Is that not fair to say?
It is, yeah. I mean, you know, for me, so, you know, being a theater kid and a performer and a musician, and then, you know, so, you know, I was working at the Palomino, and that was like a means to an end. That was like a job that I was doing music most of my free time, and the Palomino, you know, would let me kind of come and go as I please. So I do shows and travel and all that. And then, you know, it wasn't until I started at this place called the Town Talk Diner in 2006. That's when, like, the restaurant world opened its beautiful eyes to me in the way of, like, wow, you can be creative. You can have a voice. You can change people's lives, even if it's just for a couple hours. You know, watching Tim Niver, who's, you know, one of my mentors here in this industry, watching him work that floor, that opened up everything to me. So him and his partner at the time, Aaron Johnson, were, you know, my two mentors in this industry, and I worked with them side by side every day. Aaron behind the bar, teaching me his viewpoint of the bar. He came from the culinary side. He was a chef and looked at the cocktail world in a very culinary way, you know, using things like raspberry coulis and cocktails and stuff like that. He didn't have like the classic chops or classic technique on bartending like you see at the Violet Hours of the world and things like that, but he was teaching us how to create flavors and add alcohol to those flavors, you know, and that was kind of where I learned a lot of the cocktail stuff.
Interesting. I want to pull some layers back on this. I've gotten to speak to now Tommy. We had Tommy, your partner, on the show. We had Tim Niver on the show. We've gotten to speak a lot about Town Talk Diner. Yeah. And this is like a really, I don't know, I feel like very familiar with this restaurant now because I've gotten to talk about it twice in the past 3 days. Right? Yeah. So now this being the third time, I'm talking about Tim in his stageman or his stage presence, if you will. You know, his showmanship is what I was trying to say. Like really paint the picture of that. Yeah, and
it's interesting to talk about the Town Talk Diner because in this market, and it's a long time ago now too. So like there's a huge
2006, 2007, 2008 ish.
Yep, exactly. I was there from 2006 to 2009. Okay. And so there's a whole population that has no idea what we're talking about when we're talking about that. But when you think about like the, you know, folks in their, you know, late 30s, early 40s-ish range of people in the bar world, like most people are connected to that shop in some way, shape, or form from this market. So it had a lot of great talent come through those doors, including Jesse, who's my partner here, worked there as well. And so, you know, what Tim provided was this idea, first and foremost, that like we were in control of the destiny. And I think like working at a place like the Palomino, although it was great to learn your your chops, and great to learn structure and understand like that. The corporate restaurant world isn't all bad. Like there's a lot that you learn from that. I learned the art of hospitality in a very methodical way from them. But then getting to work with Tim and Aaron at this independent restaurant that had no corporate structure in it, and it was art, and it's this old diner. Man. Yeah, man. It was this old diner that they revamped into a finer diner, and it was like it was cheap but high end and high quality at the same time. They had a chef that worked at the French Laundry, and we were doing halibut dishes with pork burgers and onion rings all at the same time. We were doing adult milkshakes, and it was like this very new and exciting, and the music was loud, and the service was loud, and Tim is holding court. And I think it's like that holding court, that bar like bravado, like just like chest out and head up and like just ready to do it. And what I watched him get away with that, like he has this like art of like kind of getting under people's craw a little bit, but they like it, it's
very artistic.
I loved it. And I was not as good as he was. I was not as good about it.
You're pretty good at it, man. You've given me some zingers in the past 48 hours.
But when I was learning, I would offend people, and he would because like he would take this, we call it the point position at Town Talk, and so you're the first person and the last person everybody sees. Like you're the face of the show for the night, and that was where Tim really shined. But I also I wanted to do that. Yeah. And sometimes I had to learn.
It's a fine balance, yes. And I think what I picked up on Tim is like he's saying one thing, but his face and his body is saying something totally different. So you're like, I'm hearing this, but 90% of everything else is you're fucking with me. And it's kind of a little smirk at the end, like a little like kind of a wink, but like or a tilt of the head.
Yeah,
pause. Like you got that right.
I saw him at Saint Dinette a few weeks ago. We were doing this Bloody Mary festival, and I was meeting my son over there for lunch. And I got to sit with him at his bar counter for a little bit and talk, and it was great. But just watching him interact with guests again, I haven't seen him do that. People coming in and he's just poking and saying goodbye, and I love it. I appreciate it so much, and he's been a big impact, I think, on a ton of people that are doing great stuff in this market.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like magic in a bottle, And the little context for Tim and what I learned, if you did not check out his episode, it was episode 1052, so literally the one just before this.
Oh, sweet.
We get into his background and how he developed that, because he was in New York City at these steakhouses, and the energy, the people he was dealing with, you had to own the room, because if you didn't own it, they would.
Musso and Frank's, right? Is that
maybe? I can't remember the details of the restaurants he worked in, but it was a steakhouse in New York City, and like his narrative was, I just had to step in and like own that room, because like if these big personalities come in, they try to like control the situation, but you just have to draw that line and not let them cross the line by meeting them where they're at, but like in a way that doesn't piss people off. Like it was, and then obviously he went to Las Vegas with the Bellagio.
Yeah.
So he just had all this culmination of experiences to bring that to the Minneapolis.
Yeah.
At a time where none of that really existed in the friendly Midwest. It was absolute juxtaposition.
Town Talk Diner was on East Lake Street. Like it was a destination.
Yeah.
It was not in a part of town. You'd expect this like high end fine dining experience kind of thing, and it wasn't fine dining either. It was like really great food at a really nice price, but the service was I learned how to strive for excellence there.
Yeah.
And I learned that it was attainable, and I learned that we could be in control of the creativity.
Right.
And I learned that service was an art.
Yeah, so frankly speaking, I feel like this podcast is for the Town Talk diners of the world. Because as amazing as of a picture as we're painting right now, after speaking to Tim, I know that you guys did a lot of things right. On the back end, there was a lot of issues with fiscal responsibility and getting control of the numbers, and not having really a long enough runway, or overextending yourself to get open. Things like this that we just don't talk about in the industry. What's going through your mind as I say that?
Yeah, I mean it's certainly fun to paint the picture of nostalgia as a wonderful, positive thing, but it went the way of so many other incredible places around the country and beyond.
Like I'm sure my listeners. Wait, so this place was open for 3 years?
Was
that good?
Yeah, I mean you're right. You know, and that is the truth of it. You know, and I'm sure that was difficult for Tim to talk through and talk about. And
he was very humble and very open and vulnerable of talking about it.
Yeah, you know, and at my, you know, where I'm at in relationship to Mr. Paul's Supper Club and to Earl Giles, I am much more in the position of understanding all of that than I did in 2006 as a bartender, you know, and then, you know, eventually bar manager there. You know, I was certainly removed from that side of everything. And so, you know, only really hearing about the demise and the potential demise and the decay, and then, you know, the selling of the business to, you know, all of that stuff that kind of happened at the end there. And then another restaurant group took it over and I stayed on. So I was there through that transition, and then worked for this other restaurant company called the Theros Group here in town that I think is no longer in business. They had a few other restaurants, but they had purchased the business outright, and you know, Tommy worked there during that transition as well, and through all of that, yeah, you know, that was a very hard piece of that story, because, you know, you talk about what was so special about that place was the soul, was the people, was the feeling, was the energy, because even with like the same building and the same menu, but no longer Tim and no longer that structure, these guys came in and they're like, we're going to capitalize on what you guys did, and they couldn't do it.
Right.
It felt different.
Behind every great restaurant is a great person or people.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I think that's why I put a lot of focus on, and this is a lesson I learned after maybe 100 episodes of like, I'm going to stop focusing on the restaurants. If you listen to episodes like 1 through 60 of Restaurant Unstoppable, I do not recommend you do that, for the record. It was bad. But like, I'm focusing on the restaurant. Like, tell me about your restaurant. And then I started to realize that these restaurants are just a manifestation of the people behind them, and really focus on the people and understand what's going on in those people's minds and what they know. And that's where the secret sauce is.
I also think that there is, I would like to think, and I think Tim did this in a few other projects of his. He had opened this place that was, I forget the name of it, but you know, he had done it after, like, another restaurant had closed. He took over the lease and he was like, listen, we're going to roll this for 3 months. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And like that. And nowadays, every pop-ups all over, and, you know, micro ideas and you know, planning ahead to launch something that eventually ends doesn't mean failure. It's when you expect it to live forever and it doesn't, is more of a failure, you know. And a failure at the end doesn't mean a failure of the whole. And again, like, when you go back in the way of nostalgia, like, the Town Talk does have this, you know, beautiful spark in a lot of people's, you know, memory and in their career. But yeah, you know, it is interesting for you to talk about it that way, because for me, it's the first time, I think, in a long time that I've even thought about the end of that. What I think about is the heyday of it,
right.
You know,
right.
which was incredible. But
right.
You know, it ending and it being time for me to move on was what then allowed me to start Bittercube. You know, so I was actively, after Tim left and the Theros Group took over, I was not happy in that position. You know,
why weren't you?
Because I felt a couple things. You know, one, I felt like I kind of was like left behind a little bit. Like, Tim had went and opened up the strip club, and he would hate that I said this, but he had left and opened up the strip club, Meat and Fish, and I was left to stay at Town Talk and run that. And then the transition happened, and I wasn't really part of any of that. And just, you know, I'm an emotional human, and that's how it felt. Is that accurate? No, it's not. It's business, and here's your job. You have a job here.
Yeah,
You're the bar manager here. Stay here and do that. But for some reason, I think in my head, I thought that I was going to go on this journey with Tim in his, you know, career. As he grew, I would grow with him, and that didn't happen, and that's okay. It's definitely okay now, you know, when I think about the history of it. But it was hard for me for a while. But then I also wasn't happy there because I felt constricted. I felt that the walls had closed in on me a little bit, which is, you know, for I guess for 3 years it felt like every night was a party, and it was. And which also probably was a reflection on the business side of the thing. And then that changed, and now it was this other restaurant group that has a little bit more of a corporate structure and a little bit more structure altogether. And we're going to try to do the same thing with that structure. And they were very accommodating to me even, and I still wasn't, happy.
I think you can have the best of both worlds.
Of course you can.
For sure.
At 42 now, I definitely know that. You can't have it without structure.
Right. But I feel like to our point is that a lot of what the soul was got pulled out when Tim left. So the structure came in and the soul wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, but if Tim had that structure and those lessons on like the more disciplined side of the business, imagine what that place could have become.
And I don't want to fast forward all the way, but when we opened up Mr. Paul's Supper Club, Tommy and I would always talk about, I feel like we've been chasing the dragon of Town Talk for this whole time. Like, I have been trying to recreate how it felt to be there all over and over and over again. And Mr. Paul's was the first time that it really felt that way. And what Mr. Paul's has is structure, not EOS. We got to get Tommy involved in that, but they do have such a better handle on the finance side of the business, and it's all open, and everybody's involved in it on a weekly basis. We're planning and preparing, and that is what allows you to have that creative control and freedom. And I think that Mr. Paul's is going to be an institution because of it. We're going to make it through that.
This was we're talking back 2008, 2009, almost 16 years ago.
Yeah.
So you guys had 16 years to put your big boy operating pants on, where you still have who you are. Your soul's there, but through trial and error, you've learned over time, and now you're taking these lessons. Also, the industry has evolved where now there's access to this information, whereas before, I think you would have needed like a few tens of thousands of dollars to go hire a consultant. That the information was guarded. I feel like 20 years ago. Is that an extreme to say?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I guess I just also wasn't ever in a position to have more of my eyes on that side of the stuff, And so I left Town Talk as the bar manager in 2009. At this time, I also had, for a couple of years, had been competing in this Bombay Sapphire competition called the Most Imaginative Bartender, and I had lost 2 years in Minnesota. And then on my third try, I won.
Nice.
And this is in 2009, and then I took third place in the country.
Oh, shit.
And this is right when I was moving to Milwaukee. So I had been putting together a business plan for a bar called Distill, and it was the name of the bar concept I had created. And I was shopping it around, or trying to shop it around again, like, ironically, looking back 16, 17 years ago, shopping it around, and what I had as a business plan versus what a real business plan is, very, very vast difference there. But I had this idea that I wanted to bring to life, and a friend of mine was running some bars in Milwaukee, and he had presented this idea to his investor, and the guy really liked the idea, and he said, bring Nick down, let's meet him. And then he flew up and saw me at Town Talk, and it was very much in this, kind of turmoily spot where, I was going through divorce, or had gone through divorce. The restaurant at Town Talk was not where I wanted to be. I felt like I'd kind of hit my ceiling in Minneapolis, in a way, and was ready to branch out. And so I packed up and moved to Milwaukee without any agreement, any contract, nothing. It was like, all right, yeah, we're going to open up this place. He's got these other bars. I'm going to help manage these bars while we open up this bar called Distill, and that'll be it. And then what the original plan was, I was going to move to Milwaukee for a year, open this bar, and then we were going to open a second location back in Minneapolis. So it was like, I'm going to go away for a little bit. I'm going to come back as a restaurateur and open up another bar.
Let me make sure I understand. You were going to go partner with this gentleman. The benefit was he was going to get you under his umbrella to help fine-tune his bar programs, and in exchange he was going to help you develop your own concept, which you were going to scale in Milwaukee and also bring back
to Minneapolis. Okay. Because at this time I have a 3-year-old son, and so as a recently divorced parent, the vision was, I can make this work. I'm going to be in Milwaukee. I'm going to reside in Milwaukee, but I'm going to come back every other week.
Is that like a 4-hour drive?
6-hour drive. 6. I can do it with my eyes closed.
Especially if you have a Tesla.
Yeah. So 6 hours. And so every other week I would travel back and forth, and I would pick up Owen, and we would spend 3-4 days at my grandparents' house in Faribault, or wherever we could kind of make it work. And I did that for like 3 years. So 1 year turned into 3. But so very quickly, this non-negotiated, non-actual business agreement turned sour very quickly, like in a few months. At this time, I was also, befriending a gentleman named Ira Koplowitz, who was the bar manager at the Violet Hour, and we had met here at the Town Talk Diner. He at the time was dating a lady from Minneapolis, and so he would come up in this market, and he would visit at the Town Talk, and that's where I met him. And so we kind of became fast friends. And as I had moved to Milwaukee, this guy had met Ira because we went on a trip to Chicago, and Ira took us all around town. And then this investor was like, well, I want this guy to come up and help us open this bar as well. And so then Ira did the same thing. Ira left the Violet Hour as the bar manager and moved to Milwaukee. And our plan was we were going to open this bar together called Distill, and then go on from there and see what happens.
I am curious. You said something. You felt like you hit your ceiling in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Was there a higher ceiling in Milwaukee?
Well, as an owner, yeah. Like,
okay.
To me, the path was there's an ownership opportunity here. So I could move to Milwaukee as a beverage director of 4 bars that are already in existence. I was going to start working at one, but the idea was to be involved in all of them.
So was it more about just getting out from underneath the umbrella of the current organization you're with to have a higher ceiling? Or was it so much? It wasn't so much Minneapolis didn't have the potential. It's just like you needed to find a different group, maybe in a different market.
I think ceiling in terms of like what I was doing at Town Talk Diner. Like I was the bar manager at Town Talk Diner. Like what was my next step going to be?
Yeah, there was no room for growth.
Yeah, and then also I think especially like with the divorce and everything too, I was definitely looking for like adventure and what's the next thing. And I don't think that you have the original thought of like I want to do something new. I didn't predict that meant I was moving to Milwaukee. Like it's like I knew that something had to change and I wanted change.
So the ceiling was relative to your position with the organization, not the city.
Definitely not the city.
Got it.
No.
Cool. So the other thing I want to pull back layers on is you said that the agreement turned sour.
It did, yeah.
And it's weird. And I always try to give my guests a heads up. I talk about weird shit in this podcast. I don't think I told you about that before getting in, but I feel like you kind of have, as a listener, you listen to a couple episodes, I talk about the weird shit. And the weird shit is partnerships and money. Because we don't talk about that stuff because it's weird. We're not. It's socially awkward. You don't do it. But I'm taking one for the team. I like to go there because there's lessons here. So, what hindsight being 2020? What would you have done differently in getting involved into this relationship to prevent it from going sour, I guess?
I think in hindsight, I wouldn't want to change anything because the way that everything worked out is what got me to where we are today. Like I do look at history that way where, yes, different decisions could have been made, but those would also have created a different path. And so I think struggling with regret is a thing that I tried, you have to process, and you process it by saying like, it is what it is. And then it all worked out, but
pivot that mic down for me. Just like rotate it down for me. There you go.
I think that, not having any sort of agreement was the first like business ignorance, hey, do you want to come down and work at this bar and we're going to do X, Y, and Z? And I was like, sure. Can you help me get down there? Can you cover some moving expenses? Yeah, we'll cover some moving expenses. That was enough for me to be like, well, this is the legit thing. Right. This is worth putting on my chips.
They're putting money up, but money relative to them, what's a few $1,000s,
nothing,
right?
Yeah.
But in terms of a business agreement, like get into like knowing what you know now. And not to say that you have any regrets, but for the person listening to this, who was you,
I would have never done. Yeah. So if 42-year-old Nick had someone be like, "Hey, do you want to come and open a bar with me in any whatever city?" I wouldn't just be like, "Yeah." I mean, it wasn't like I'm just like blind, like blindly going down, But it wasn't concrete enough and protected. We weren't protected.
What protection would you need?
I think the protection of like what the agreement looks like. I mean, basically for me, this bar opened still. There's a bar in Milwaukee called Distill, and it I wouldn't say that it is a replication of what my original vision was, but the name is, and the original idea was, and it still opened under this person's business list of businesses, and we weren't involved in it, and that's a
so
hard
it was
thing.
It was your creative intelligence, essentially your intellectual property, in essence. You did the heavy lifting of actually like building the systems, building out the restaurant.
It hadn't even gotten that far. So Ira moved up. in, I think, like October of 2009, and by November, the first week of November that year, we were no longer part of that team. And really, I think Ira solidified the weird, like it was weird, and I think like you're trying to get away from around all the weirdness. You're like, yeah, all right, this guy is kind of weird, or this doesn't seem right, but the eye on the prize is we're opening this bar, right? And then I think, you know, what the big turn was, we were in a business meeting talking about cost and numbers and what our vision was for the menu. And this investor said, you know, we're not going to make money on your fancy cocktails. You don't plan on having buckets of beer? Yeah, we got stuck on like buckets of beer. And we're like, what? And he's like, you need to have buckets of beer. And we're like, what? And like, we're opening a cocktail bar. And he goes, we make money on buckets of beer. We're not going to make money on your silly craft cocktails.
What year was this?
This is 2009.
Okay, so still that wasn't
in Milwaukee.
Into 2010?
In the Midwest, that was still very new, right?
Yeah.
So Violet Hour is pretty new still, and like the world of cocktails is not where it is today. So this is still, I think, at the pretty near beginning of the cocktail movement that we're in now. So that meeting was the first kind of like realization, like something's up, this doesn't seem right, and then
A mismatch in vision.
yeah, and so then we pulled out after a few more weeks of it, knowing that it wasn't going to be what we wanted it to be, and when we felt that creative opportunity get taken away, we were done.
This is why it's so important to sit down and have sessions, and it sounds so cheesy. Vision. Let's sit down and just dream together. Let's sit
Yeah.
around a table and say, what's the future going to look like?
Yeah.
What's the work we're doing? What are people saying about us? How are we making them feel? How are they making us feel? How much money are we making? Where's that money coming from? Like, and literally paint out the picture of the future of your business. And the cool thing is you can have AI voice translator documenting this whole thing as you go, and you can go through that and like literally distill a vision that you all can sign off on. This is where we're going.
Yeah,
Because you
it's a great idea.
you know, it's stupid. It's just like, but at the same time, it's like you can solve so many problems by just making sure we're all going to the same place in the
Yeah.
future. And I know you're an EOS guy, and I'm sure that will come out, but like they bake that stuff into
Yeah.
the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, right? Like
Yep.
this stuff is important. It's in there for a reason.
Yeah.
So what was next for you in your evolution after Distill?
So we left Distill unemployed in Milwaukee, in a new city that we had only been in for Ira like a month, for me like 3 months, and we were kind of at like ground zero or rock bottom, whatever you want to call it. And like, you know, I mean, even the discussions of like, you know, can we return back to our respectful cities and get our jobs back? And we decided not to do that. We said, let's take these next couple months, the end of this year, and work on building something together. And so at Town Talk Diner, I had already been, you know, making, you know, everything. You know, in 2006, the access to all of this crazy cocktail ingredients that are now available everywhere was not available yet, right? Like you couldn't even find orange bitters. And so as somebody who started, you know, getting into classic cocktails and history and trying to replicate these things, you'd look for stuff that you just didn't have access to, you know.
Who was your inspiration? Was it DeGrasse by any chance? Was he one of those ones? DeGrasse, is that the
Oh,
name?
DeGrasse.
New York?
Dale DeGrasse.
Dale. Yeah,
Dale
DeGrasse.
DeGrasse.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
no,
much.
Art of the Cocktail is my first book, you
Yeah.
know, and he's such an incredible human. He's impacted so many people in this field. He's a wonderful, wonderful person.
I want to
so
get him on my show.
You should, man.
I think I'm like 1 point removed from him.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
gotta lock that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His son, I could definitely connect you with. I mean, I think I could probably connect you with them. But
Okay.
I mean, other people that you've had
We'll talk later.
other people you've had probably have a better, you know, closer relationship. But yeah, wonderful person, and that was definitely one of the first cocktail books that I purchased, and then Imbibe by David Wondrich, and that was like when you started to understand the history of the cocktail world, and trying to replicate stuff that Jerry Thomas did in the 1800s is crazy. So now we're making all this stuff in house, including bitters. Ira's at the Violet Hour, which is, you know, this incredible institution of classic cocktails, and it goes all the way to the lineage of Milk and Honey and Sasha Petrosky, and this very important way to look at the world of cocktails. And so here you have Ira working on, you know, history and all of these crazy liqueurs and spirits and these old cocktails and perfecting them for the modern palate. And then you have me at Town Talk kind of making all of this stuff in house, and it's kind of laboratory culinary like. And you know, when I first met him, you know, it's kind of a funny story. So, you know, there's a guy, Toby Maloney. Have you heard of Toby Maloney? He's a cocktail guy. He worked at Milk and Honey. He opened up the Violet Hours. James Beard
Haven't heard of him.
nominated
But now
and He's an author. Anyway, so he was opening a bar in Minneapolis called the Brad Street, and so it was this big kind of like, hey, do you guys know this guy's coming up to town, and he's going to open up a spot, and he's going to take all of our business. And so we heard that this guy was going around town, stopping at all the good cocktail bars, and so we should be on the lookout. And so, we were kind of on guard at Town Talk, making sure that we were ready for this out-of-towner who thinks he knows what he's doing. And so these girls come in one night and they're taking photos of the menu, which again, 2007, 2008, that wasn't as normal as it is. And so we're like, who are these people? And they're like, oh, we have a friend coming in from out of town. We're like, oh, from where? They're like, oh, from Chicago. And so we're like, oh, this is this guy.
The alarms start going.
Yeah. And so then Ira shows up with his girlfriend at the time, and we think he's Toby Maloney. He's not. But we're kind of a dick to the guy, and like, I don't know if he even noticed, but we were like kind of just like being standoffish or whatever. But anyway, we end up hitting it off, and it's not until like I think an hour later so that we realize it's not the guy that we thought it was or something. But anyway, long story short, we became fast friends, and that's how we kind of connected all of this. So we started Bitter Cube in Milwaukee after leaving Distill. That was the next kind of jump.
And what was Bitter Cube?
Bitter Cube started as a bitters company. So Ira was making bitters at the Violet Hour. I was making bitters at Town Talk, and we started to share those things. And again, like bitters at this point was not as accessible as it is today. It wasn't a saturated sector of the market. Were other people doing it? Sure. But I personally wasn't smart enough to be like, well, I should check out and see if there are competitors, just like we're going to do this thing. And we did it. I think we didn't even know like Bitterman's. I didn't know about Bitterman's until after we were already making Bitter Cube, for example.
So that's another company that
another bitters company. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. And now there's just it's a pretty saturated market for a product that you use by the Dash.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, but it was like a renaissance in the cocktail world.
Yeah, and I think we were kind of on the beginning parts
yeah.
of that, And so we launched Bitter Cube in 2009. It's still a viable business today. Ira runs that now on
I
his own.
think I have some stills of your bitters from last night. Because were those the ones that you were using, your own bitters?
Bitter Cube, still prominently placed everywhere. Yeah.
So there will be B-roll of your bitters in this frame right now.
Yeah. And technically not mine anymore. I did sell my half of the company to Ira during the pandemic. We split up the business.
Let's tap the brakes real quick. Get big picture. Zoom up to 30,000 feet. Not get into any detail. Kind of from this point of starting Bitter Cube in 2000. This all happened in 2009.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I see that you go from Bitter Cube. You had Bitter Cube. You were also doing Bombay Sapphire.
So after taking third place in the country, they started this program of like regional ambassadors. So it was normally like the first person, like if you were number one, a winner of this competition, you were then kind of their like ambassador.
It's probably
for the
how
year.
they were trying to find their influencers, their mavens to promote their goods.
Yeah, so I didn't win it, but I think I charismatic enough and charmed the right people that they were like, let's have Nick involved in this as well. And so they took the top 3, maybe top 4 people to Miami, and we started doing some training, and then it kind of just grew from there. Their national ambassador, Gary Hayward, and I became really good friends, and he was a big champion of mine and wanted to take me along for this ride. And so basically for 10 years, I was part of this, ambassador team. Primarily what I did was judged the most imaginative cocktail competition. So I traveled around North America judging drinks. It was the best thing. I got paid to eat, drink, and judge people, my 3 favorite things. And it was a real great trip.
I have a similar lifestyle, but I don't feel like I'm judging people. I like to think I'm learning. Everyone does it. Yeah. But I think, it is a great lifestyle. You're absolutely right.
It was fun.
After being so close to the award culture, what are your perspectives on that?
Oh God. I agree with a lot of the stuff that I've heard on just a few of your podcasts so far is the common thread of their out of control. I think from the bartender side, on the culinary side, you're talking about James Beard and the Michelin, right? And then on the bar side, it's way more saturated. Like every brand wants to do a bar competition. Like the big meme joke right now is Bar Boss, right? Like the Dos Hombres mezcal guys, the Breaking Bad guys are doing a Bar Boss competition, win $10,000 to be called the next Bar Boss or something like that. So there's a lot of jokes about that. But I do think that they're has come a time where there's like bar competition fatigue, where like you can't really get the best. Wow, look at that!
Drinks are
Thank
rolling
you.
up.
I'm gonna taste this.
All right, what do we? Do you know what it is?
Mm-mm.
Looks like there's
No, it's delicious.
Is that dried pineapple?
Yeah, we make it's called disco citrus.
I
So
should
we
say dehumidified.
we dehydrate fruit and dust them in edible metals. So
Oh,
yeah, so you can like gold dusted lemons and oranges, and we also
hold
like
that up for the camera. We can
we-
zoom in
oh,
on
yeah.
it. Put it straight in front between your face and the camera. Yeah. We'll zoom in on
and
that.
it's got some silver edible gold
If
on
you
it.
have not subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, now's the time to head to youtube.com/Restaurant Unstoppable.
Oh.
Please subscribe.
So while
Plug
building Bitter
over.
Cube, I also was building Bombay Sapphire, or not building Bombay Sapphire. I was working on Bombay Sapphire, and it was an incredible opportunity because it took me all over the country, all into Canada. I had all of Canada, so I got to go to Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, Calgary, over and over and over every couple months.
I'm not ready to get off
Yeah.
the award culture yet because I want to reciprocate from what you shared. So, I mean, I don't want to be naive. I recognize that it is a win-win. These companies that are out there that generate these award programs are making money off of the marketing side of things, and it's great for restaurants because they're getting, and people because they get these titles, and it's a way to build your resume and to drive traffic to your business. I just think that we could be a little bit better about not being naive to the point that at the end of the day, who's really winning? Is it the award company that gives the awards, or is it the people at the end?
Yeah.
And I think that there is a win-win, but I think the balance could be a little bit better, and I think we could be a little bit better from your perspective as a young guy. Like, you're like, I can get a title. This makes me feel seen, and I
it
feel
was
good
a
about
game
this.
changer.
And it did, I'm sure, help you climb the ladder.
100%. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
like competing, but again, like I also like there are people that do like they compete in everything. Like you're competing in everything until one of them pops. Right? I got lucky. I did this 3 times locally, won the 3rd, then took 3rd nationally, and then got a gig.
Yeah.
Like that trajectory is pretty lucky, I think.
Yeah,
That's
and
not,
So, again, I don't want to be naive. I do see the win-win, and I don't think it's completely evil, but I think that these companies could be a little bit more, at the same time, they're building an army of people to go out and promote their brands. So they have their ulterior motives.
Yep.
They're going to try to find, hey, we're going to give you this award, and hey, we want to select you, and hey, go around and promote our products. So it's like, just be open-minded that, like, yes, they are providing opportunity for you, but there is an ulterior, invisible hand there, motive of like there's something in it for us too. And I think we could be better about being aware of the manipulation from some of these companies.
100%. I mean, it is the marketing team of any spirit company that is facilitating these competitions.
Being played.
The game is sales. The game is sales. And, again, like the benefit is, exposure and travel and connection. I think to me, like, what is the most valuable thing that I took from that decade-long work with Bombay is that I know, again, pre-pandemic, I would say I knew nearly everybody doing good work in the beverage world in North America.
Yeah.
You could pick a city and I could be like, here are my top 5 places, top 5 people. And I loved that. You know? It's not the same now.
There.
But
There's benefits there. And I just think that, I think to come full circle and to really, the read between the lines of what I'm trying to communicate is that my biggest fear is that people are going to see award culture and think that the objective of this industry is to be the best. And that's what award culture promotes, is like the goal is to win.
Yeah.
And that's just not the goal of hospitality. It's about making sure everybody else wins. And I think that you need to not lose sight of that, because I think that's what makes the industry better for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not about being the best. It's about creating security for everybody.
The goal of hospitality is hospitality. I think that we talk more about that today in our training programming than ever, where we say, like, the art of the cocktail is a tool. It's part of your magic act to get people to come in and experience hospitality, and like we try to constantly refocus, not only in the restaurant but company wide at Earl Giles. Like, our production team is part of a hospitality company, and we get them to think about every aspect of our business through the lens of hospitality, we are a service. We provide a service. We make products, but what we really are providing is hospitality to consumers, to bars and restaurants and hotels throughout North America. That is what we're trying to really achieve here.
Yeah. So back to your story, your timeline. How are you evolving as a professional? If the mission statement is to inspire the industry, how are you evolving and inspiring during this time?
Yeah. So, I mean, BitterCube opened, in the 11 years that I was working and growing BitterCube, we opened I think 55 different bars and restaurants in the country,
Wow.
trained hundreds and hundreds of bartenders, developed a platform called the 7 Pillars of Classic Cocktails, which is very much inspired from the lineage of Milk and Honey all the way to the Violet Hour and then to Ira and I. I mean, I think a lot of people in the consulting world would connect their dots kind of to those similar people. And so our training platform and menu development was a big part of our business. And so I think what I was doing in learning and growing in that decade plus of BitterCube was, learning how to go from being a bartender and a person with an idea to somebody who was, running into developing a business. And Ira and I, as partners, are very different. I think we worked really well together in that respect because we were very good at different parts of the business and good at some of them together. And so for quite some time in that business, it was more like I was running the consulting side of the business and he was running the bitters manufacturing side of the business.
I think now is a good time to take a break to thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back. I just realized we're 45 minutes into the sucker. We haven't taken a break yet. I'm into it, dude.
All right.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no strings attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
We're back. I think we'll roll in with that drink being passed to me, and I am having lunch and enjoying a
You're on
salad
salad course number 2, the carrot drink, the rabbit kick.
Ooh.
So carrot, pineapple.
You just gave me a whole new reason to get into juicing.
Yeah, for drinks.
When I'm in the RV, the plan is to get a juicer.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about putting
Like,
alcohol
what's your
into it.
best thing to do with carrot juice? Vodka. Yeah.
Well, yeah, what's the foundation?
Yeah.
Anyway, so where we left off, you're talking about you and Ira and how you became good business partners and you balanced each other and you became collectively good. Is that?
I think
is that the
so.
train of thought?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that is his version of that history with us as well. It was 11 years of 50-50 partners with somebody that, we butted heads often, but I think we also recovered from that headbutting, and the end result was often like the right thing for our business.
Yeah, you said you're also starting to develop your business chops around this time. You're no longer a naive boy who just wants to open your bar. You actually want to make money while doing it.
Well, that was the thing too, is like, so, the original thing that brought us to Milwaukee was this idea of opening this one location and then maybe a second location in Minneapolis, and then who knows, right? And what BitterCube ended up being was not only this bitters company, because like, how are we going to make money on, like, yes, we knew that we wanted to make these bitters formulas that we had started to develop together, but how are we going to live on this? And so the consulting side of the business was always the piece. It was, let's start a company that manufactures bar goods, but also teaches.
Upsells the goods to the clients.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, I was wondering where this was going. I thought that might have been it. So you have these chops, you won these awards, you clearly know how to develop a bar program, you're contracting yourself to other restaurant owners and bar owners across the country and saying, this is how you use old-fashioned, like, this is how you do it. Here are the tools.
Yeah, we talk about the 7 pillars of classic cocktails. That's kind of was our thing, where we said, listen, there's basically these 7 formulas here, and let's talk about them and break them down and talk about flavor. And then we develop a menu. That menu is, thematic based on the restaurant concept, but all these drinks still tie back to these historical components. So if I can teach somebody these very basic cocktails, how to talk about them, teach a team how to taste together and have collective palate, then I can implement these new, more unique flavors and more unique spins on these classics. But our thing was always, every drink has been made in some way. There's nothing new under the sun. Like, if you don't know the history of the cocktail, you're missing a piece of that cocktail. And so I might make an old fashioned or a Negroni that has, Thai tea in it. I might make a Thai tea Negroni, but like it's still a Negroni. I still need to know the history of the Negroni or understand the build of the Negroni in order to do that. And I took a lot of that from the, like, with judging the cocktail competition, like if I'm traveling and somebody's making drinks, like what I would generally expect from that bartender is to be able to tie it all back. Right? It's not a new invention. And I think that when we think about the cocktail world and some of the negative things in the craft cocktail scene, like, these bartenders are arrogant, the drinks take forever, they don't really seem to care about hospitality. It's more about the liquid and their knowledge of this thing.
Ego.
Awards. Yeah. How we try to remove that is by education. Like
yes.
what we were seeing in the markets all over was a lack of knowledge made you more arrogant. A lack of knowing what you were doing and the history of it made you seem more
homage to the roots.
Yeah. So that, if you hand me a drink and you're like, I just something I've been working on and whipped up, but I call it Vanilla Sky. It's vanilla vodka and lavender syrup and lime juice. I'm like, no, that's a fucking gimlet, man. And it's a gimlet with vanilla flavor, but it's a gimlet. And if you don't know that,
it's really cool, like learning about the history of alcohol in like the barmen of the 19th century. Like, dude, those people were first and foremost. It was about just the hospitality and the creating the experience, and it was about everybody else winning, not me and my ego being seen as the best.
Yeah,
and that's what made them the best.
Yeah, and I think I do think that there was ego there, if you think
ego's omnipresent, I get it.
Sure, but and I only say this because if you think about like the old fashioned, and just for a quick history sidetrack here, so the old fashioned was originally called the cocktail, and then it became the old fashioned because you have these old timers going into bars being like, I don't want any of this fancy mixology that you guys are cooking up back there. Just make me a whiskey in the old fashioned way. And that's let's not let the truth get in the way of a good story, but that's the story that we tell about the old fashioned. So if you think about like that nomenclature, and if a whole country's nomenclature changes from the word cocktail to old fashioned because people were like, I don't want any of these fancy cocktails, just make me a whiskey in the old fashioned way. To me, that makes me think that some of those bartenders were probably pretty arrogant with their sangria and their julep and their sling and
it's
their
all
toddy.
relative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I get that perspective. But you bring up a really important thing, and I think that the significance of education is underplayed in creating the experience, because when you can educate people on the thing that they're experiencing, that ties, that knowledge doesn't go away. That's there. That's in the head, and they're tying that knowledge to the experience they have at your
pay it forward.
bar.
I mean, that is, the problem of, I think, the work that you do sometimes, and not the problem, but you're either training your replacement or you're training the employment of another restaurant. Like in a world of consulting, in a business model where we were opening bars all over locally, tons of stuff locally, and beyond. I'm training people to now become either managers in those places or they get hired by other people. Like we, especially, when you go to a market and you're training the same store, different bartenders over and over, that starts to feel like you're like, man, I'm just training the whole market here, these basic cocktail things.
But I mean, the business lessons I want to pull from this, one, I think I want to unpackage your business model as a consultant, also upselling and creating almost like continuity in your business, where like you have the upfront initial cash flow you're getting from being the consultant, but then once you move away from that relationship, they are now baking your bitters into their ordering. Like you're adding another channel for.
And what a silly thing to sell, right? So bitters are used by the milliliter. So here we are, super excited about the smallest component you can think of and really giving it our all, which is awesome. We make what we think are the best bitters, and they're really important. And we didn't think bitters were important because we made them. They're really important backbone of cocktails. But at the same time, the model of where we came, which was like, wow, what if we could control the narrative for bars and restaurants and hotels throughout the country and make this easier to do? Can we create more products that create a more holistic approach to that vision? And so now you fast forward, and what we've done at Earl Giles is really taken that original idea of want to consult and get our bitters into your menu. Now it's everything. We make every component of a cocktail. So like, we produce elixirs and citrates and syrups, and we are now the prep kitchen for not only our consulting clients, but for thousands of bars and restaurants, throughout North America.
And you started off air. You started talking about Earl Giles, and I was like, "What exactly is this? A distillery? Are you making like?"
Yeah,
you're like, but it sounds like you're a holistic. Like you're not just selling the booze that goes in the drink, but you're selling the garnishes,
mixers, everything. Yeah, everything that we can. Yeah. Earl Giles is 7 years old. It started by Jesse Held and Jeff Urkla, two colleagues of mine at the time that had, again, Jesse worked at Town Talk Diner. We've known each other for a long time. They both worked with me at a place called Eat Street Social that we opened in 2012. And Ira and I opened as the bar consultants. And then they left a year later to start, technically 9 months later. They told me they'd give me a year. They left 9 months later and started a Jester Concepts. So they were now the bar team for Parlor Bar, which is still a really great, well-established cocktail bar here. And they were operating 4 different restaurants under this Jester concept. And they were producing the products for all 4 stores in one commissary, basically. So they were kind of having this idea happen internally in their own business as well, while BitterCube was starting to create things like elixirs and citrates and trying to create shelf-stable products that we could ship across the country to our consulting
clients. Who were those 2 other partners again? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, Jeff Urkla and Jesse Held.
So Jeff and Jesse.
Yeah, and their middle names are Earl and Giles.
I met some of them.
You just met Jesse. Yeah, he just dropped you off that salad in a glass.
Also, he is Earl, or he's Earl, right?
Yeah, Jesse Earl Giles.
Okay, got it. So there's a lot of names.
Jesse Earl Held, and then Jeffrey Giles Urkla.
That's right.
Yeah,
I was like, I know there's one, but it's not their first name.
Yeah, there's both their middle names.
There's a lot of names floating around.
It is. Yeah. It's confusing, but
this goes all the way back to 2012.
Yeah. Wow. So 2013, I think they started seven years ago or so.
So what was their focus? That's what I wanted. Sorry.
Yeah.
What was their focus?
So they were bartenders that we were all working together at a restaurant, and then they quit and moved to Jester. It was a restaurant group here.
Yeah.
So they were managing a bar called Parlor Bar, and then eventually 3 other bars. And they were, what Jeff Urkla was doing for these bars was he was the prep guy. So he was making, basically out of a commissary kitchen, all of the mixes for these menus.
So
for
mixes
all these bars.
And garnishes?
Yeah, I think just syrups probably for the most part at that point.
And I were focused on the bitters.
And we were making bitters, and
so
we had more of a national approach to our business, and they were very much focused on this one restaurant.
A lot of moving
group.
parts. I just want to make sure I'm getting it all straight in my head.
It's a lot, yeah. And so, but it's kind of ironic that I'm here with Earl Giles now, because, I didn't start working with Earl Giles until about 2 years ago.
Okay, so Earl Giles started back in 2014.
Yep, they were selling just ginger beer to start.
But was it Earl Giles in 2014?
It was
7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, while Earl Giles is coming into formation, they had a solid 5-year run before you came into the picture.
Yep.
You're still flying around the country, traveling around the country, coaching, teaching people about the 7 pillars of classic cocktails and how your bitters fit into those cocktails, and educating bartenders across the country on the next generation.
Yeah, I mean,
basically going back in time and showing what we got so far away from what being a barman was.
And so before pandemic, like this building that we're in now, the Earl Giles Distillery, these guys had already put their letter of intent on this place. So this was supposed to open before the pandemic.
These guys being Jeff
and Jesse, and so they're the 2 founding owners and they're the face of the company, the main owners of the business. In terms of like historically.
So before we get into Earl Giles, you had an 11-year run with bitters.
BitterCube, yep.
BitterCubes, 2009 to 2020.
Yep.
What was the progression? Why stop BitterCubes?
Well, I think after 11 years of being 50-50 partners with...
That's a fantastic
run. It's a great run. Yeah. It's a great run. And it wasn't, to be candid, it wasn't my idea. I didn't present that idea to the table. Ira did. And it took several months to kind of untangle 11 years of business together. But I'm very proud of how we did it, the process, and how we ended, which was
how to exit.
Yeah. I mean,
what advice do you have for that?
We are amicable. We are, is our relationship the same as it was before? Absolutely not. Are we friends? Yes. Are we close? No, but we are okay, and we check in with each other.
It's
and
still fresh. Give it some time.
And we still do work together. Like I said, they're still the only bitters I use anywhere that we work. We use them here. We have them on the shelf in syrups. We put them in elixirs, and I still get to blind taste the bitters as one of the tasters, which is really awesome. We also launched a liqueur company together in 2012 called Heirloom Liqueurs.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And so, those I still proudly serve everywhere I can. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess like, the advice of how to end something like that, I think, for me, it was a lot of honesty with each other. And I certainly, when it was presented to me, I was very resistant at first. But then when I accepted that it was the right move and had to happen, along with our Bitter Cube lawyer and then me having a new lawyer, we worked through the terms of what that looked like, and we got to a place after a lot of back and forth that seemed fair to me.
Where did Bitter Cubes grow? What was it like? Give us a picture. Of
I mean, we started out making 20-gallon batches of bitters in the back corner of a distillery in Madison, Wisconsin, to producing 200+ gallon batches of bitters, distribution in 30+ states and beyond. And then also launching that liqueur company in 2012.
Is that a profitable model? Like, I don't know anything about this. Is that like what? Like,
definitely, yeah.
No perspective.
Yeah, no. Bitter Cube, I think, was definitely profitable. It definitely paid our salaries. We had, before the pandemic, I think there was 22 employees.
Wow.
And so, that is a manufacturing facility as well as a team of consultants that were traveling around the country doing training.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, it was a viable business. It still is a viable business. I'm sure it's a more viable business with one head of the team instead of two.
Right.
I know that Ira obviously has a close team of people that he's working with. I'm not sure what the partnership structure is now that I'm not there, but, I definitely... I think one of the easiest ways to say it is, from my vantage point, I'm like, it was a $2 million business that had two CEOs, and it didn't need it.
Yeah.
And I think that also after 11 years, I think Ira was ready to move on, and that's okay. And I understand that. I think as I learned to know myself more too, I'm like, yeah, I get that, and I am happy about it. I think it was a hard thing, like any breakup. It was a hard thing to process. But again, like Bitter Cube had become me. It was who I was. It was my identity. And it was an identity, a layer of my identity that I never thought I was going to have without, I was never going to live without. So to go through that process, to leave that behind and like start into the unknown of like what next and what's going to happen was so I was, again, so lucky to have that because I didn't think I would ever have it.
So neither you or Ira own Bitter Cube today?
He does, 100%.
Okay, so
I believe he does.
Oh, because you said he
yeah.
wanted to go on. So I don't know. I was curious if like he wanted to get out of the bitters business and you wanted to keep it,
No. I think it was more wanting to get out of working with me as a business partner. Honestly, I mean, and I don't mean that in any other way than like it was either do you want to keep this business or do I want to keep this business? How are we going to split up the business? And so what we did is we split things up. So after 11 years, we had started, the bitters, the liqueur company. We started a line of Bloody Mary mix called Garden Variety. We started these elixirs called On the Fly Elixirs. We started this tonic program called the Tailor Made Tonic Program. And so basically I took all of the non-bitter, non-liqueur businesses and started a new company called Drinks Apothecary.
Okay.
And that was my new focus on this.
After the breakup.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Ira focused his attention on the bitters and the liqueur company.
Got it.
And so it was kind of, serendipitous where I think Ira always wanted to focus less and less on a ton of different things and be able to focus on the thing that we did, which was bitters making.
And you still have Drinks Apothecary today, or has that been consumed or like absorbed by
Earl Giles?
Giles.
So
okay.
I started within a year. I had then, I started Drinks Apothecary during the pandemic after the sale of Bitter Cube.
Lots of things moving around here.
Yeah.
Like I was even doing my research. I was like, he's got so much going on. Is this still going on? Are these things of the past? Are these things present? So you take over the more of the liquid side, or like a bitters or a liquid, but the elixirs. It
was like everything that wasn't bitters or liqueurs, I kept.
Got it.
And
tonics.
Then, yep. Yeah, and wanted to really what I wanted to do with Drinks Apothecary was expand the idea of customization. So like I wanted to take the idea of customization into the whole liquor side.
Well, one thing I think is really exciting that I just want to preference with, like, if you're listening to this, I think that people in the restaurant industry, when they get into the industry, they're like, I can either be a chef, a bartender, a server. But the truth is, like, if you're truly passionate about the work you do, there's life beyond working in the restaurant. And, like, there's things you can do, especially as the world of hospitality fragments and gets more specialized. And I think that we're moving in a direction of specialists, and everybody do one thing really well. Be known for one thing. Like, you can help people with the one things that they want to do in their business to stand out in a noisy place. So, like, you can, like, see where I'm going with this? Like, for you, it started with bitters, where, like, the world of cocktails was evolving, and there was an increase in demand for bitters because that's what the palate evolved. But not every bar program has the resources or passion from their employees to make bitters. So you can become the solution and then sell that. And I think that we're continuing to fragment. And there's opportunities to take whatever passion you have and to make a business out of it. What's going on through your mind?
So what Earl Giles has now become is one name with all of that fragmentation under one roof. So like what we are doing in the most simple way is allowing people to have customization without complication. Because what I think the beverage world wants is every bar wants to have house-made syrups, house-made products, everything done exclusive. Not, you can't get these flavors anywhere else. Everybody wants that. But what it takes to do that is expensive. It's a lot of labor.
Keep going.
A lot of inconsistencies.
What else?
Labor is an issue, cost is an issue, and consistency is an issue, and efficiency.
Yeah. So a big part of our conversation at Restaurant Unstoppable right now is that as we move into the future, it's getting harder and harder to be a mom and pop restaurant, because you have to learn how to do more with less. And that this is a perfect example of doing more with less. Like you don't have to be the one that makes the bitters, that makes the syrups, that's one. You need somebody on staff who is worth their weight in gold because they have the knowledge to do that and the desire to do that, which is not easy to come by. But then you actually have the labor of doing the work.
And where do you want your people? So, like, here's the other thing. Your best people end up in the basement over a cauldron making all of these things, when what you as an operator, I want that person out in front of my guests. So if I only get them for 40 hours a week, how many of those hours am I willing to put them away, locked away, making all of this stuff?
Right.
And if what we really are looking for is that touch point of it's mine, it has my name on it, it's the exclusive, we can do that for you. And so, like, what we do at Earl Giles, like Monday through Friday, is we're meeting with bar people, hotels, national accounts, people who want to develop RTDs and beverages, and we're creating. And so we get a restaurant comes in, they say, here's what we're thinking about, here's some of the ideas we want to do. We create those mixes for them, and then we put their name on it.
So you have custom accounts.
Every one of them is
wow.
I mean, like, we have on our sell sheet, there's probably like 80 different cocktail mixes, and then we have 400 different flavors and extracts to choose from. So it's like going to the movies where you can get like a cherry lime Sprite, but way bigger and way cooler.
That's cool.
But like, it's all customized. So you could be like, hey, I want to do a grapefruit Paloma, but I want mango in it. Like, we've got it. Like,
that's cool.
And it all happens in real time with the team. And so that's what to me, the whole career spanning to this point, it's like all of it tied together.
Right.
It's like, here's all this work that I did in the restaurant world. Here's where I see the need. I see the need for, you have to have a creative cocktail program. But now we talk about education, especially post-pandemic, like the world of talented bar people, the pool of talented bar people. How can I have 12 people on a team opening a restaurant and none of it has experience? These people can only afford to have me here 3 or 4 days to launch this program, creating these cocktails on tap, pour over, draft. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible to serve the guest. And then we train throughout the year.
Right. So, I mean, I want to pull back some layers. I mean, we have some time. I don't know if you have a hard stop in 15 minutes, but like, I feel like we can get so much information out of you, especially around the economics, things I definitely want to talk about with you going forward, because we have made it. We are at present day. What you're doing now, like, we're here, right? We're present time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you can speak to the economics of a bar program, where that's going, what the future of that looks like, how to get the most in terms of margin out of your bar program. You're also a director for other restaurants, and like you have a lane where like you contribute that.
Yeah, and
element.
And to talk to just move the focus back to Mr. Paul's a little bit. As Tommy was the one that did get us to chat.
We haven't spoken much about Mr.
No,
Paul's.
yeah.
I was also calling it St. Paul's Diner Club when I first
great.
started.
Yeah.
So I'm getting better.
St. Paul is a city.
I know. Yeah. I'm horrible. It is Mr. Paul's Supper Club.
Yes. You even were like Mr. Paul's Dinner Club, and I'm like, listen, man, it is supper. We are in Minnesota. It is supper. It ends at 6:30 p.m.
So talk to us about how that happened, because we haven't really unpackaged that yet, and then we can get into like big picture, like just educate us on how to.
Tommy Begnaud and we were like best mates. Like, we were so close. We were working at Town Talk Diner together every day, and then going, drinking at night, crashing at each other's houses or picking each other up. And, we were like thick as thieves for like a real solid couple years. And then I left him, is what he would say. He'd be like, you left me, you abandoned me, you went to Milwaukee and started Bitter Key with Ira. That was always like the running joke, Yeah. And he went on to have this really storied career, continuing to be a better chef. He left Town Talk, and I don't know exactly the trajectory, but he got to work at Butcher and the Boar as the chef there, and like I think that's where he really, honed his style in, and really made him prepared for what he was about to do, with Mr. Paul's. Not that he knew that, but like that was like I think a really important step for him. And so, for 12, how many years did you say? 15 years we didn't work together, right? And again, I moved away and then traveled so much as well.
Yeah. Tommy was episode 1051 or 50, one of those two. Sorry to interrupt you. If you guys skipped over that episode, be sure to catch up. Sorry.
And so we were kind of, our friendship from like how close it was certainly had like decayed over that decade plus time. And in, always trying to rekindle that or like find the time. I mean, I think there's something to be said in this industry, especially like you hope you're friends with the people you work with, because I personally don't have a lot of time outside of work and family to have, I don't have a lot of free time to go hang out and stuff. So
I lean in that direction. I think you have to love the people you work with.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then how are you going to come in with that soul and there's a balance between leaving the personal elements out of the business side. Yeah. But anyway.
So Tommy and I stopped working together for that long a time. And so obviously like your friendship is impacted by that and you're not seeing each other and stuff like that. But we always wanted to work together again. And, he found out about Bitter Cube and the separation and all of that stuff happening, and we had started to kind of talk a little bit more, and he invited us over to his and Carrie's place for a bonfire, and so we had a couple of dinners and cocktails, and he had kind of brought up that he was going to be opening the spot, and it's kind of like two old buds kind of moving their feet around, like, hey, maybe you'd be interested.
Who's gonna make the first move?
yeah. And then it kind of went from there. And I met Courtney, who, Courtney, Carrie, and Tommy are at that restaurant, 100 times more than I am. I am unfortunately, it isn't my main job. I'm as the CEO of Earl Giles, I'm here mostly, but. Two factors with my time there is that I'm there during the day quite a bit at Mr. Paul's, developing the drinks, making sure the program is
They just had
sound.
their 2-year birthday, right?
They did, yeah, just last week.
And you joined Earl Giles in 2020?
Yeah, basically we opened Mr. Paul's 2 years ago, and then Earl Giles opened about a year and a half ago.
Okay, so in order of operation, it was Mr. Paul's, then Earl Giles.
Yeah, and I think, in all fairness, I don't like none of this was planned this way, right? So like I had just started Drinks Apothecary, and that was going to be my plan. I was going to now run this business of one person, which was really like exciting. Like, there was a very brief moment where I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. Who am I?
Yeah.
What am I? What do I want? And then I came up with this, Drinks Apothecary thing, and I was like, I found it. This is it. I'm going to hit the ground running. And then while I was running that business, it was the Mr. Paul's opportunity. And so now I was going to be the beverage director there. But again, it was always going to be a part-time situation. It was never intended to be my full-time gig because I was going to be doing Drinks Apothecary. But then the opportunity to merge Drinks Apothecary with Earl Giles presented itself after the fact. And so my involvement in this business kind of morphed into kind of taking control of the operation and taking partnership in the team structure altogether. Kind of happened after the agreement with Tommy. So, that kind of changed the things a little bit and changed my amount of impact opportunity. That and then 2 babies. I have 2 girls under 2 years old.
3 kids now.
Yeah, I have 3 kids. Yep. And so, none of those. Well, Owen was here, but the 2 little girls were not even in discussion yet. And so we found out that we were having Juniper when we took our first trip to New Orleans. So we did a big, awesome trip to New Orleans with Tommy, Carrie, Courtney, myself, and my wife Allison. And we thought we had gotten COVID or the flu. And I don't know, my problem was probably just hungover, but then she found out that she was actually pregnant and not COVID or the flu.
Oh.
So we found out that we were having a baby in New Orleans.
What was the name of your first child?
Well, my first child.
Oh, your first daughter, I guess.
My first daughter's name is Juniper George Kosevich. Yep. We told my grandmother that we would name our next baby, the middle name would be George, whether it was a boy or a girl.
That trip didn't have any negative impacts, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It is, yeah, it's a weird one to navigate. You're like, well, we found out we were having a baby after 5 days in New Orleans. Yeah, no, she is.
My dad always tells me he was definitely drunk when I was conceived.
Yeah, sharp as a tack. So, yeah,
Good,
and
I'm happy to hear that.
and it was really special. We had went through 3 miscarriages. So we were, when Allie and I started, my wife and I have been together for 11 years now. And when we I think 10 years, 11 years, it was when we started dating, and even after being married, like we weren't planning on having kids. I had already had Owen, and we were kind of happy with where we were headed. And then something happened, and it was time to want to have babies.
So one thing I really want to get into, and along this line of being a specialist and knowing your lane and staying in it and finding ways to add value to multiple people, I think the world of business is almost polyamory in nature, where like the idea of being in business with one partner, I think we're moving away from that. Like I think we're not so worried about people cheating on me, where it's like, hey, like, I'm gonna stay in my lane.
Yeah.
You stay in your lane. We go further together, and I can add value to multiple different businesses, and that's kind of where I want to get. So like, get into the logistics of the partnerships in your polyamorous business experience.
I agree. So Ira and I were 50-50 partners, and it was all in. So for 11 years, that relationship there was no other work being done that didn't involve us, and that was like the pact that we had made. And maybe that's a detriment to us after that long. I mean, again, I think 11 years is a successful relationship length of business. But, there is something maybe to that. Like, my work with Bombay was all kind of wrapped into the Bittercube stuff and all of that. And so when I left Bittercube, the one thing I didn't want to do was repeat that situation again, meaning I didn't want to have that same style of business relationship. So with Drinks Apothecary, I was really excited about the independent nature of it. And then with Mr. Paul's, it was always my partnership there, or my family's partnership in Mr. Paul's, is a smaller amount and a smaller role.
Right. So your role is director of beverage.
Director of beverage. There's a bar manager there, Ainsley Jones. He runs the team.
But your family is a partner in the business.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So part of my my package, if you will, or my agreement in that relationship is that, for my family's partnership in that business, I am the beverage director. So there's some cash exchanged, some salary, but it's a very small amount.
Okay.
And then it's about that partnership, that
the
kinda,
equity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think this is another weird thing to talk about too. But like, this is a reason why I'm a huge fan of Profit First. I know we talked about EOS. We're going to get into that. I'm not even sure where that comes into the picture. Maybe is it here at
Earl Giles.
Earl Giles.
So it was the first time I ever did it, and I've talked to Carrie and Tommy about it, and they know somebody that's really close to the
we're gonna get them
EOS.
on board.
Yeah, we have to.
But in terms of Profit First, the reason why I love Profit First is because it's cash flow allocation. So it's 5 accounts. I think in the restaurant industry they like to see 6 accounts for meals tax, because that's not your money. So first account is income, second account is profit. You take 10% of every penny earned, because what's the point of having a business if you're not building wealth? The next account is owner's pay. So that's a separate cash flow where, this is for the partners. This is where the partners go. And then the next is operational expense. That's employees, that's cost of goods, that's labor, that's everything else, rent. And then did I already say tax? And then sales tax. So tax, whatever that is, and then sales tax on top of that for the uniqueness of the restaurant industry. So you have all this. For every penny, you allocate cash flow. And then what depending on like what money is left over in your operational expense, so you pay everybody first, and then what's left over determines growth. So I just love it, and I think especially because you can, if you're the founder of the company, you take your profit. You can choose to split that profit up and share that with people too. So if you do profit sharing with your employees,
profit. Okay, and profit is spelled PROFIT. Is that?
Yes. Am I saying it weird?
Never heard of that. No, I was making a joke about.
Is that? Is that?
It was a restaurant joke about the lack of profits.
Where we get paid?
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea. I'm trying to change that culture and say like, if you take that off the top, start small, take your profit, let cash flow, the extra operational expense, determine your growth. And I think we get it backwards.
Yeah, and this, Earl Giles, again, as a company, I've only been part of this vision and this dream for about 2 years now. And so this was already a 5-year thing in motion. And the original part of Earl Giles that was like manufacturing syrups and mixers and things, that was always kind of supposed to be a means to an end for these guys, where like their big goal was like, we're going to sell these products until we get into the distillery, then we're going to open up this distillery and this restaurant, and then that's going to be our focus.
Right. I rolled into this place and I was expecting a distillery.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah, 18,500 square feet of space. We have 2 stills. We have a canning line, a production facility, a full pizza kitchen, 36-seat bar, a mezzanine, and then the drinks apothecary, which lives upstairs. So just to tie us back in, so that after drinks apothecary was during the pandemic, a little push cart that had like maybe 50 different extracts on it, and I was making custom tonics and mixers, again, for a restaurant industry that was basically shut down. And then we start to see growth in the hotels. As the hotels started to reopen, that was like a big opportunity for us. Like, we have product in almost every Moxie hotel and AC hotel in the country now, for example. We really saw this thing that we were trying to push before the pandemic about, let us be your prep kitchen, really makes sense as the restaurant world started to reopen. Because, now more than ever, people are like, shit, we can't have a guy downstairs for 40 hours a week making syrups, right? Like, how do we factor some of this in a little bit? Or my whole staff isn't here. How do I relaunch with a new staff? And so that was a big part of the expansion. We've doubled revenue in the bottling company side of the business for the last 2 years. I think we'll do it again next year as well.
Interesting. So we got down this path is talking about the power of staying in your lane. I mentioned profit first as a way to make sure you're allocating cash flow so you can find partners and negotiate percentages and have that structure around it. We kind of painted the big picture of what Earl Giles, or I don't know why I'm struggling with the names of your operations. Earl Giles, I'm saying it correctly, right?
Earl Giles, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yep. I see the G and it throws me off, but it's a Giles. So Earl Giles. And I mean, what do I need to know? If you can choose the path of this conversation going forward, what do you want to talk about? What do you think I need to pull back on you to leave my listeners better off? I know EOS, so we can talk about when that can, but what else?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the other, like, if we're like, well, now what are you doing and what are you here for? So like, why I was bringing it back to Mr. Paul's, like, Mr. Paul's is the perfect example of like our perfect customer. It as a provider of product. So like, it's the full circle that I get to experience on both sides.
Get up on that mic.
I get to
louder in here.
Sorry, buddy. I get to experience that on both sides. So, we have 16 drinks on tap or are on the menu at Mr. Paul's Supper Club. All of those mixers and components come from this facility. And then the prep team there, very small amount of hours, produces the cocktail program for that bustling restaurant.
Got it.
We've got 8 drinks on tap. Everything else is pour over, and all of that stuff is done customized here at Earl Giles.
We're going to take another break to thank our sponsors. We're going to come back, and I want to get into the economics of that.
I kind
of want to drill down on like the business side of how is this even possible.
Yep.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no strings attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
We're back, and I want to round off what is going on here with Earl Giles, because I feel like there's more of the story that we can unpackage. Definitely want to hit on EOS. I know you're an EOS operation here at Earl Giles, and I love EOS.
Yep.
And then I also want to get into the economics of, you know, this model that you're having where you're working with different restaurants across the country, kind of being the elixir, bitters, all things cocktails that you can't do in-house solution, and how, like, is that even affordable or in reach for most restaurants is something I want to unpackage. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, let's start there. I mean, EOS is what, you know, let's finish on EOS. That is what got us to where we are today.
Where are you today? Paint the picture of where you are today.
I mean, we are, you know, a year and a half in. You know, basically we opened for business last summer. So, you know, like roughly 18 months ago, we call our 1 year anniversary kind of like more November was when we had our full licensing and operation. And, you know, the original, you know, track for this business of Earl Giles was to open this distillery and restaurant and be distributing spirits and liqueurs to multiple states. And that process has taken longer than we had originally anticipated or the team had originally anticipated. And so what's been really exciting about the growth of the bottling company side, the bottling company being the non-alcoholic mixer side of the business, that side of the business has doubled revenue for 2 years straight. It'll do it again next year. And that has supported the growth, the slower growth of this other side of the business, which has been really exciting to see. And so, you know, we are finding our stride in this building. I think we had a expectation of what we wanted to do for weekly sales, and it's been more sporadic, right? Like, I think like that's the other thing about what we're doing here is that it is different. It is a distillery. I think that when people hear Earl Giles Distillery, they don't know exactly what they're getting into.
It's a distill pub.
It is, yeah. It's
like
a spirit pub,
but a spirit pub. And you don't see a lot of those.
Yeah, and the food is incredible. Our chef, Matt Reisinger, is very, very talented. And, like, yeah, it's a pizza place, but, like, it's a pizza place, and it's doing a lot of great stuff.
But you're more than just, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard spirits, liqueurs, tonics, syrups, elixirs.
Yeah.
So keep going.
There's kind of three prongs, right? So there's the distillery. The distillery now is producing 6 SKUs: gin, vodka, rum, and then 3 liqueurs. We have a spritz liqueur, which is like an aperitif, a fernet, and a quadrisec. You have all heard of triple sec before, but have you ever heard of quadrisec? No. 4 oranges. 4 different types of oranges, a little bit of orris root. So that's our orange liqueur. With more stuff to come. We have 2 stills. We have a Vendome still from Kentucky, and then a Detroit hot rod still, which is this really cool piece of technology. There's only 14 of them in the world, made by people who used to design hot rods.
Oh, cool.
So it kind of takes the idea of a radiator and uses like the idea of a radiator to create vapor distillation, which is super cool. I'll show you that in a little bit.
Please.
And then you have the restaurant, right? So very, very large space to fill. And you know, we have a huge flux where we'll do $25,000 on a Saturday and $4,000 on a Monday. We're open 7 nights a week. We're open 3 days. We first originally started open, like, we were closed on Mondays and open for lunch and dinner 6 days a week, which we had to pivot and move around. And I think what's cool about being in a drastically climate difference is that it gives you these opportunities to be like winter menu or winter hours, summer hours. And so like you can kind of always pivot your hours based on season. And so right now we found a really good stride. I think that like the hours of operation are working for us. And we're currently in this position of like trying to control cost with a different number than what we had anticipated, meaning we wanted to hit $70,000 every week. And if we hit $70,000 every week, everything's fine. But if we clip $60,000 in a week, suddenly we're hitting issues, right? So it's like that $10,000.
$120 in another week, you got to find that balance, right?
Exactly, and that's the thing. And those are rare. And right now we're still not, it's still difficult to predict, right? Like we're trying to plan every week for what's going to happen. and it's just a beast of its own. Like suddenly we'll have a Wednesday night and we do $17,000, you know, and you're like, yeah.
Do you sell plants here too, or is that
we
just
don't
the
sell
vibe?
plants? No, the plants are just here.
I
This
love
is the vibe. Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and it's a little thinned down. We had some, there was some blight that we had to deal with in the plants, and so they're a little thin right now. But we will be bulking them up again. We'll probably try to make it through the winter, but I think especially in Minnesota, it's important to have this much foliage inside. So
I think you also mentioned garnishes. Do you sell
Yes.
those?
Yep. Yeah. So Earl Giles, the bottling company, again, we make a line of dehydrated fruit called Disco Citrus. So again, all customizable. So you can pick your fruit, pick what color, it's edible metals or, like luster dusts, different colors. We do cocktail colognes, so aromatics that you spray on top of cocktails. We make 3, but they're all customizable.
Right. And I'm big on experience right now. I'm preparing for my conversation with Joe Pine, the author of The Experience Economy, where I can't wait to open the lid on that dude. But all these little variables, all these compounding things go into that experience, and it's a lot of labor on restaurants to be able to produce all these different experiences at all these different sensory levels. Whether it's the visual, the flavor, the smell, and there's opportunities for you to stay in your lane in delivering the experience and then finding people who can help you create.
And this is why at the end of the day, no matter what we're producing for you, we are still a hospitality company, because what hospitality really is trust, I think, in a way. And what I need and what I'm getting and what I'm working towards is that I have trust with my clients. So the trust with us would be for someone to be like, hey, here's a list of these new drinks. Can you make my mixes for me? Right? So we have the beverage director for all of Marriott fly in, and we'll work on menu R&D for 2 days for 3 different projects. And then there'll be 4 more projects that are just sent, here's the menu. Can you make this? And that trust of I know that you guys have the palate and understanding to create these things for this team. That's the trust that we're really basing this on. And I think all that comes from hospitality.
I love that. So what do you think makes sense? The economics, how do we, what is it, get into, because I know this is, you're on one side of it where you have the Earl Giles business, and then one of your clients is also one of your partners. Yep. Right? Yeah. So I know that you have a real close behind the scenes as to cost and expense and how do you do that? What are the economics of partnering?
It's actually most difficult with your partners, right? So it is. In a company that does $2 million of, non-alcoholic mixer sales in a year, of that, a small percentage of that is Mr. Paul's Supper Club, that relationship is the most difficult to navigate, because at the same, Tommy is also a restaurateur, and he's like, well, you also can make these things here. How do we find the middle of what is good for the team, what is good for the pocketbook, and what is good for the experience? And it's been great to have someone like Tommy to have that conversation with, because if I can't figure it out with my own partners, how can I expand the business model elsewhere? The easiest partnerships are hotel partners in a lot of ways, because there's a mandated program that if we can be part of that mandated program, it becomes very easy for people. But a place like Mr. Paul's that's where I want to be. I want to be in all of those restaurants. I want those bar teams to know what we're capable of for them.
Mr. Paul's is doing $8 million a year. Is that the number I remember?
5.5.
Five and a
half.
Yeah. I don't know where I got $8 million.
Well, if Tommy said that, then that's what I said too. So,
but I'm assuming a big percentage of that is alcohol sales. That place is cranking out.
Yep. Yeah. And of those alcohol sales, most of that is cocktail. A lot of good wine right now as well. We've seen wine tick up, which is really awesome. But it is a cocktail place,
How many of your cocktails are on draft there?
8.
How many cocktails are there?
I think there's 14 or 16 right now.
So how do you?
Let's say so. There's 8 on draft. There's 4 of them in slushy machines. Yeah. So that's 12, and then 4 of them are pour over. No drinks are made a la menu.
What percentage of restaurants do you think are actually doing cocktails on draft right now?
All of the ones that I'm involved in. In fact, I think that the draft system is the most important bar tool.
Why?
Because the most important thing that we are doing is trying to get that cocktail to the guest in a timely manner. I'm trying to create the most unique, exciting, visually stimulating cocktail experience to get it to the guest the fastest possible. And so taps and pour over, anything. So it took me a long time to get to this.
Why?
But because I was self-serving. My original
ego.
Yeah. What? My original everything I did was based on what I wanted or what Ira and I wanted or what we thought was right. And I think maybe for that time period it was important. We had to not have cranberry juice because we didn't make fucking cosmopolitans, right? We have a cosmopolitan on the menu here. It's delicious, by the way. But like those types of lines in the sand, I think were important at the beginning of this thing. And I don't think they are anymore. I think the most important thing is efficiencies, consistencies, and visually exciting drinks. And if I don't have the time to do the visual element because I'm too busy doing the same thing that everybody else knows how to do around town, no one gives a shit. And not all of our clients agree. And especially in tertiary markets, when I'm opening a bar, like you get people that are like, we want you to do all the cool stuff that you do, but we also don't want to scare people away. And it's like, well, I'm just trying to make it easier. And like, to me, it's a lack of knowledge and understanding and education. If somebody downplays pouring an old fashioned out of a bottle and handing it to you, like, I don't understand why. Like, why wouldn't you want that, right? Do you want your soup made in front of you? Do you go to the ramen shop and like, actually, could you start the ramen broth from scratch?
Chop those carrots, and I will wait for them to boil, please.
And at the end of the day, all we're doing is sugar soup. It's just sugar soup, man.
Well, there's that level of showmanship, and I think it goes back to the experience, but there's ways to go beyond the experience of seeing the drink being made to the presentation.
Yeah. And I'm not saying don't shake any drinks, don't stir any drinks. I'm saying you have 16 drinks on the menu and you're a $5 million restaurant. This is how you make that.
What can you streamline?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you have one drink of those 16 drinks that needs to get shaken because it has egg white or methacellulose or something in it, then that's all people need.
Have I said do more with less yet in this episode?
I don't think so.
I think I have, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, do more with less, dude.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out where can we it's success by 1,000 cuts, not death by 1,000 cuts. Like, what little tweak can we hit? Were you joking when I said, have you heard me say you gotta what did I say? I already forgot what I said.
Do more with less?
Yeah. Fuck.
I don't think. Did we say that already?
I think I did.
All right.
Yeah. I was like, is he fucking with me again? I can't.
I'm
tell.
not fucking with you.
Okay.
No, I'm super high, man, and I don't remember anything.
You have to do more with less.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect example of that. Like, which ones make sense to have the showmanship? Do I need to do every step with every cocktail? And can we streamline the ones that are maybe popular but don't have as much of a flair to the process of making them? So,
and then here's two things. So, if we're thinking about the social media aspect of this world, are people taking photos of you jiggering your rye whiskey into a cup, or are they taking photos of the finished cocktail with this beautiful garnish? And if I only have time to do one, what's more important? And to me, it's the glitter, it's the pizzazz, it's the visual element.
I would say most people, yeah.
Yeah, and to me, I'm not taking away from any of that. I'm saying if what is the best thing for the business, what's the best thing for the customer, and its efficiencies, its consistencies. We have such a low turnover at Mr. Paul's Supper Club because I personally think for the bar team, we have created something that's easy to do. And when you make it easy to do during service, easy to do for batching, you have a happier bar team that is a better hospitality ambassador. This is the resistance I hit most of the time in my consulting worlds. I have to convince people of what took me 15 years, 20 years to learn. I have to do that in 3 days. And I have to get somebody from not knowing how to make drinks all the way over to the other side, which is pouring it from a tap is the way to go. Trust me, it is.
I mean, and I hate to say it's all about throughput, but in terms of volume and profitability and making money so you can provide security to your staff and your people, throughput's huge.
Yeah, and that's been a big part of Earl Giles. Everyone here has the ability to have insurance. We compensate. We cover 50 to 75% of that based on where your position is in the business, and that's a hard number to look at every month when you're doing your P&Ls. When you're going, did we make money or lose money? That stuff that we're doing to protect our team and to keep our team in a positive work environment is the stuff that is unwavering right now as best as we can to.
So in terms of I don't know if we really drilled down. I think we're kind of painting the big picture. I don't know if you can give us any specific numbers, but in terms of choosing to work with companies like Earl Giles,
You did it.
I fucking did it. I promised you I wasn't going to do it again. Earl Giles.
It's a weird one to correct people because people say it a lot. I was at the chiropractor before I saw you today, and the guy kept saying Giles, and I was like, when do I? Now I've let him say it 3 times. Now do I correct him? Is that an asshole move? Yeah,
I promised too. Earl Giles. And so if we wanted to outsource all these elements, putting drink like. At what point do we? Is it because we can do more throughput? Where is the labor really being picked up, or the margins really being spread?
Yeah, so your labor in prep.
Okay.
So prep labor. So if you have a 12 drink menu and every drink has one ingredient that has to be made, then if you're making drinks a la minute through service, the time is adding up. So you can produce more cocktails, therefore making more money. The psychology of getting a drink on the table before food comes, there's like an 80% chance that people order a second drink if they've already had a drink before the food comes. So if you're in a position where your team can't get the cocktails out fast enough and food is hitting the table, you're losing sales. So your guest check average has the opportunity to be a higher guest check average because of the efficiencies behind the bar.
Right. Another thing I want to bring to surface is you got to start treating your little business like a big business if you ever want to be a big business. It's not a privilege that you get invited into the big business pants of the world. You just start doing big business
also,
things.
In the world of what we do, if what we're doing is hospitality, if I'm a bartender and I'm in my well and I'm doing this, looking down at my tools, looking down at my ice, or I can do these things so fast that I get more time to engage. I don't want your spending money today. I want all of your spending money.
It's relationships.
I want you to come here. I want you to always want to come here. I want you to tell all your friends to come here. And that's not going to happen with bartenders who are buried in their thing. So we're removing as much of that as possible so they can be ambassadors to Earl Giles, ambassadors to Mr. Paul's Supper Club and beyond.
EOS.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm a huge fan of EOS. Based here in Minneapolis. I don't know if you knew that. Did you know that?
I did. Yeah, that's why we've had that's why Tommy and Carrie know somebody that's part of EOS, and then we had somebody come in and do traction with us because they're locally. Yeah, an implementer. Yeah.
Yep. So I am not an implementer. I think I have aspirations on becoming an implementer, but I do have the blessings to talk and promote about EOS. I actually had Gino Wickman on the show. He did not want to talk about EOS because he has moved on. He has sold his portion of EOS to, I want to say the CEO is currently Mike Payton. I had Mike Payton on the show to talk about process. So in EOS, there is the EOS Traction Book of Libraries.
Yep.
I've had Mike Payton on the show to talk about process. I've had Gino Wickman to talk about his book. I think it's like the 10 Disciplines or something like that, which is not in that library. I was hoping to connect with Renee Bauer, I think I'm saying his name correctly, but he's behind How to Be a Great Boss. And I'm trying to get the author of Mike Winters, I think is his name, of Rocket Fuel. Okay. And that's what I'm really excited about because I am not Rocket Fuel, and I need Rocket Fuel. Are any of these words meaning anything to you? So in the world of EOS, the Rocket Fuel is your integrator. So it's the person that knows how to take your vision as the visionary, the CEO, the dreamer, and like they're
That's
good
me.
in the dirt.
Yep,
they're good in the dirt.
That's Kevin. So you met our integrator.
Yeah.
You met that he's our operating officer.
Yeah, they
Chief
build what
Operating
you
Officer.
see.
Yep.
So anyway,
and keep everyone on task.
So I'm a huge fan. I'm trying to
huge
teach
game changer.
EOS. What's that?
It's a huge game changer. So our experience with it. So I had never done any of that with Bitter Cube. Ira and I never had any of that. I think it was, I look back in hindsight and man, I wish I would have had these tools and this resource with Bitter Cube. And I didn't.
Like paint the picture of how it's been a game changer. Like what elements of EOS?
So how I got involved in it was as I was starting to work with these guys and when it became the plan to merge the two businesses, and as I think as their vision for Earl Giles was changing from what it was going to be to what it could be, was when we did our first traction meeting, and it was half a day, all the partners and investors in a room, and we built this whole thing.
VTO.
And it was amazing. And now our entire work week is built on that. So we have an L10 for all departments.
What's an L10?
That's our level 10. That's our
Weekly
bird's
meeting?
eye view, looking at everything that's happening. It keeps tasks moving forward. We've got quarterly plans, yearly plans, 5-year, 10-year goals. They're talked about like mantras, right? Like this is what we're doing every day. Yeah,
Dude, it's huge.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is communication, and it creates it's communication, language, and growth. It's a system to communicate, a system to echo your language, your culture. Language is culture, and a vision that is constantly being echoed, in a process to be constantly working towards the vision. And this is what happens with businesses. They start a business and then they get lost in the day-to-day of the business, that they don't ever grow. They never get 1% better. EOS is a formula to get 1% better every day. How does that work?
Yeah, so I think accountability is the one, and then creating the proper lines of communication. And so, and maybe like it's not on an every day getting better, it's definitely on an every week. Like you have, all of our meetings are on Tuesdays, and so you basically have 7 days to move the needle on these things and have the
rocks.
To bring them forward. And what have we done with our rocks? What are we doing to move the rocks forward? Are we going to complete them on time?
And we're using EOS language right now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the rocks are basically goals. So and to kind of go 30,000 feet, you have your 10-year plan, and then there's a 5-year plan, and then the 1-year plan, and the quarterly plan, and the weekly plan. And you're basically saying, what do we do this week to get to that 10-year plan?
Yep.
Right? So everything is reverse engineered to basically take bite-sized chunks or rocks to move, and then everybody has their own rocks depending on what lane they're in to move towards that 10-year plan. So you basically have quarterly rocks, and your goal every quarter is to choose your rocks that you're going to accomplish this quarter. And every week you're saying, am I getting closer to that quarterly goal? And then if you're talk about how that's impacted what you've done here. Give me an example.
Well, because I think again, like in a business that is doing so many different things, that organization is very important. And I think that what traction and what the L10 allows us to do, EOS creates the operation of the business instead of doing the business. And I think that all of my partners are doers. So like, Jesse's working the floor right now, right? Ursula is the head of R&D, and I'm working up in the apothecary. I got a dinner tomorrow night, right? So like you can get bogged down in your business and doing your business to the point that you look up a year later and you're doing the same thing.
You're in the business, not on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to do both. And so this traction exercise and creating the L10 and the plan and the platform allows us to not only for us as operators stay on task, and I think that's especially in the restaurant industry, like that attention deficit and that
we get into our little silos.
Yeah. And so for me, it's that moment every week where you come up for air and you go, did I do it? What am I doing? Where are we? It holds people accountable and honest. And it allows you to, I think, help each other too. Like, when you're talking about your, workload, work stress, home life, that whole thing that we start with, if you're at 3s, the next step is to look to your left or right and go, how can we help? What can we do to take off the burden?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen a lot here. There's not a lot of that, but it is a really great way to check in and connect with everybody. And as the CEO, I go to all 4 of those meetings in the departments, and then we go to the C-level, talk with all the C-level, and I leave on that Tuesday feeling like I've got a pretty good understanding of where we are, where we need to head this week, and are we on goals for our future.
We covered a lot of I'm trying to what's the point of having core values if you don't echo them?
Yep.
So I think a lot of people write things, their core values, their vision down, but they never resurface it.
Yep.
So our core values here at Restaurant Unstoppable is we have integrity. We do the thing we say we're going to do. We're students. We're here to learn. We're educators. We're here to teach what we're learning. We are collaborators. And I see this a lot in what you're doing, where a lot of my core values are manifesting in your story. You started as a student, you became the teacher, you stayed in your lane, you learned your lane, you started collaborating with other people to go further together. We are communicators. I think that's where EOS comes in, where you're communicating where are we going, how are we staying on track, do we have a process to communicate where we're going, and then we show up, we have fun. And I love it when my interviews reflect my core values, because those core values were built very intentionally because that's what I've seen. That's what it means to be unstoppable.
Our number one core value, which I'm happy it is, because it's the thing that I have. I don't think I was born with it as much, and it's a muscle that I've had to learn and it makes you a better leader is empathy. So empathy is our number one core value, and we try to bring empathy into every situation and every decision.
Yeah, I see empathy as communication because really it's emotional communication.
Yeah.
It's using that emotional intelligence to communicate, to put yourself in their position and try to understand.
I think, so for me too, is as we built this company, like the most important thing that I'm having to remember how to do in many different ways is bigger picture understanding. Because I think that as the company gets bigger and the staff gets larger and the silos get more dynamic and there's more layers of management, when decisions are made, 5 layers away from you that impacted something greatly, trying to get everybody to see this holistic approach or this bigger understanding, like, hey, this thing impacted the opportunity to get this account, which would have opened up X, Y, and Z. And so we have to make sure that we're making decisions correctly based on the potential trajectory of what our opportunities are. Even as an established business, we are still in an infancy.
Yeah.
And every opportunity counts, and every opportunity, begets another opportunity. And it's important to try to get that to be a ripple effect.
Yeah, man. I've loved this conversation. Can you believe that was 2 hours? We're almost at 2 hours of recording. Doesn't that go by fast?
It does. Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I made the choice to go long because I feel like I'm connecting on such a deeper level with my guests now, really letting things unpackage. And anything we didn't discuss that you want to get out before I start asking you the final questions?
I mean, other than I think to the listeners, I think it's we're available. We're here to help. Orders at earlgiles.com. And every week we are getting to meet with new people all over the country and talk about how we can make their bar program more efficient and more delicious.
I mean, one of the missions in the mission statement is to change the world through inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. We talked about, I think, we kind of addressed what needs to change in the industry around this idea of just doing more with less, but anything in terms of what you would like to see change in the industry?
I think they're changing already. I think I'm happy about where the changes are. I think that it's all a pendulum. And I think that having come into this cocktail world in that place of being kind of born of that arrogant cocktail world mentality, and now operating a business that doesn't really even squeeze fresh juice. It's a big cyclical thing. And so I think that to me, that growth, I think, is the most important piece of what I've done. And I'm excited about where we are. I think what needs to change is, I think it's going to do it on its own. I don't think it needs
the word
any help
balance.
from me.
Finding the balance,
So. I mean, we didn't even get into life balance and work balance stuff, but yeah, I think I'm balancing in your drink menu and then balancing what the expectation is to execute.
I'm a bad person to talk to about life balance.
Me too, man.
But I do think there's something to be said about just doing what you feel like you're meant to do, and if you find that thing, your cup's full, man. My cup's full. Do I wish I had a girlfriend sometimes? Yeah, but at the same time, I get to move around and meet amazing people, and I know I'm doing work that helps other people. So I don't know, when you find that thing, if you're able to find that thing, it's special.
This amazing team here at Earl Giles, the people that I get to work with every day, Mike Byrne, our director of operations, and like I said, Kevin Briette, our chief operating officer, and Jesse and Jeff, and our distiller, Jeff Fricky, our chef, and that Mr. Paul's. I mean, the fact that I am able to I think that they're very gracious with me and the babies, and it's hard to be gone at night, too many nights in a row. And so I know it's not permanent, and I know that I'll be able to be there more, but I've been very lucky to be part of that Mr. Paul's team, and to have my name on that, in any capacity is just such a blessing. So
yeah, for sure. I think there is something to be said about spinning the flywheel early in your career so you can create opportunities later. Yeah. I think you've done that. You busted your ass for how many years working behind the bars to develop, to have the reputation to be a partner.
Yeah. It took a pandemic to slow me down. I was 60% on the road before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then it all crashed, and I was stuck we were at the time living in a, 800 square foot apartment downtown Minneapolis. And it got small really quickly because before it was every week I was gone and on the road. And now the idea of getting back on the road is, it almost makes my stomach drop a little bit.
Here come the questions.
All right.
What is one thing about your business, a value, a system, an uncommon thing that makes you truly unstoppable?
I would think, again, kind of what our common theme has been today was that what makes us different than any other distillery or beverage business is our ability to create other people's dreams and other people's visions. And I think that there's a level of hospitality to our business at Earl Giles that's unstoppable. And I think that what is unstoppable about Mr. Paul's Supper Club and the team there is this unwavering commitment to a good fucking time.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really special about that, and you felt it last night.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm still feeling it. It's still reverberating inside me. The mission statement, again, is to change the world through inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. How have you personally transformed? Who are you today versus the man you were back in 2000?
Man, I feel that I have changed and grown a lot. I've had a lot of people work, with me over the years and very closely. I hope that at 42, my leadership technique is much softer and gentler. And again, we were talking, I think last night, a little bit, or earlier today about, I keep getting older. The bartenders are still in their early 20s. How do I connect to those people? And again, that empathy piece is listening to understand and trying to have empathy around people in their position and patience. I hope I'm just a more patient teacher than I was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I love that. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the work of you, your restaurants, and your businesses would be lost with your departure. With the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy, what would they be?
3 pieces of wisdom. I would say the first one is a mantra we say here often is it's just sugar soup. So whenever things get a little too crazy around here, we just remember that we're making cocktails. Mm-hmm. We're not saving lives. I think that, the other idea is believing in yourself is super important. There's a balance, that we talked about ego a few times here, and ego can be a bad thing and a detriment. But I think that, finding and understanding your ego, I think, is important, and knowing that it can be a powerful tool to actually, do good for yourself, and believing in yourself is important.
That's one.
That was 2.
That was 2. Wait.
First one was the what did I just say? The believing in your
You're
own
the one
ego.
feeding me drinks.
Balance
over
your
here.
ego was number 2. Yeah.
Balance your ego is number 2. What was the first one?
The first one, I forget what I just said.
The listeners. Will remember.
They'll get it. And then the third one, the third piece of advice would be, I think, remember to fight for balance. Like while your ego is pushing you to do the work and work hard and work harder than everybody else, to also remember to find the balance to make it all worthwhile. Is that fair?
Find your balance, feed the ego, and another great virtue that is in there somewhere.
I'm not.
There is no question.
I don't remember.
Thank you so much. You are unstoppable, and this is where we have you call somebody out. So, who do you respect and admire? I found you through Tommy.
Yeah.
He told me I had to talk to you, and this is really the North Star of Restaurant Unstoppable going forward.
Love it, man.
I just want to be the person to share my stage, but I want you to tell me who's doing it right, who has knowledge, who needs to be made an example of. Who is that person?
So I think that you're on your way back out east, and you were going to head to Chicago. I do think stopping in Milwaukee and potentially meeting Mr. Ira Koplowitz could be a lot of fun.
Ira
Koplowitz, yeah. My business partner of 11 years at Bitter Cube, and he is now, running the Bitter Cube empire that he is building now on his own. And I think it'd be really cool to check in with him and see what's happening in Milwaukee. It's a lovely, lovely town.
I'd love to go there. I mean, I stopped quickly, but I would love to go back.
Yeah, and then what other cities are you were going to stop in?
Honestly, man, I don't know how much stopping I'm going to do.
Okay, yeah.
But just give me any, it's more, less about where I'm going, more about who you just think the industry needs to hear. Like, what perspective? Who's doing it right?
Yeah.
Who has the ability to transform the industry if they can share some values and wisdom? Who's that for you?
I think another person that comes to mind, I'm trying to. I feel like you've kind of saturated your visit here in Minneapolis. So I'm trying to think farther out a little bit. Another person that would, I think, be a lot of fun for you to chat with is a guy named Justin Burrow. He's out of Houston. He has a bar called Captain Foxheart's Bad News Bar and Spirit Lodge. And he has a storied history in the business and operates, a bar with the best name ever. But it's an awesome cocktail bar in Houston.
Fox, here's Bad News. What
so
was
close.
It?
This is like when we started the interview. Captain Foxheart's Bad News Bar and Spirit Lodge.
Okay.
And I think he's wonderful.
Bar and Spirit Lodge. Okay, got it. That's an awesome name for a bar. Justin, look out, I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
Ira, look out, I'm coming after you. And I'll say it again. Well, before I say it again, how can we connect with you?
So, Nick at earlgiles.com, at Nick Kosevich on Instagram. Those two places will get to me.
Yeah. So I did talk to you during the break. We're going to try to get Nick to join us live in the network to do a Q&A if any of what we talked about resonated with you and you want to speak directly to him, ask your questions, any questions I might have missed today. So stick around for the closing thoughts to get the date on that. And this is where I say, Nick Kosevich, thank you so much, my man. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.